think in standing in positions of such privilege and great access to information, even though we have such censorship in our media in all different ways, to be able to investigate, to look deeper, to question, to challenge, to begin to form a critique of these things that's rich and kind of rooted in an economic critique, is rooted in a humanitarian critique, is rooted in kind of a larger global politic critique, and a critique of militarism and a critique of racism. I think it's so important. I felt that for people that risk their lives every single day to remain human, that risk their lives to remain, to stay, to continue living with dignity, that takes such courage. And for me, again, standing in a place of such access to not also take those kind of risks. I think we're called at this time in our world, of a time of real human emergency and ecological crisis, and just so much horror, to try to carve out spaces for creating something else. And I hope this piece can really go beyond one of the subtitle of it, actually, in How to Start a Fire Under Siege, is really looking at people's agency also in resistance and all these other different forms of resistance people have, from everything from baking bread to raising children, to wielding stones, to, all these different forms. And honoring that as well. And so then where do we find ourselves? There's kind of this tagline, I like to say in it, and that, the world is on fire, and where are we?
And I think, too, when you have had the opportunity and on some level the privilege to see it with your own eyes, it really does bring it home. We do have a couple callers who would like to join the conversation, so let's go to the phone. Hello, you're on A Public Affair.
So, this is really great to hear your voice. This is Rockamine. It's good to know that this wonderful child with this djembe has turned into this great performing artist and still doing such wonderful activist work. Tell your parents they did a wonderful job, and you and the good work that you're doing. And I'm going to try really hard to get to the play.
Thank you. It's such an honor to hear from you.
Thanks.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks so much for that call. And I think whether we have any right to or not, Sol, I think a lot of people in Madison are very proud of you and to have you back in the community, and to see that as I said, you were such an amazing, very young activist, and to see the trajectory that your life has taken, and to expect many more great things in the future. So thanks for that call. I think that caller spoke for many Madisonians. Let's go back to the phone. Hello, you're on A Public Affair.
Hello, Judith. I just wanted to also share there's another opportunity to hear Sol speak about all these issues, and that's coming up on Tuesday. She's speaking to our local chapter of the United Nations Association.
Great.
Beginning at 7, and that's at the Capitol Lakes Retirement Center. So another chance to interact and to hear everything that she's doing. Having be able to see this production and see Sol's experiences over the last year as a member of extended family, I also just wanted to give her a chance. Maybe you were talking about all the intersections involved here, but something that may surprise people is that there are actually some LGBT aspects, I think, of what you're doing. Some of the intersections of experiences, and if you could maybe talk about that a little bit.
Great. And I just want to make sure people know the Capitol Lakes Retirement Center, is there an address for that?
That's at 333 West Main Street. It used to be called the Meritor Retirement Center.
Okay, 333 West Main, and that's Tuesday evening at 7 o'clock. The local United Nations Association chapter, open to the public, and Sol will be speaking again, 333 West Main Street. Thanks for that call and for pointing us in that direction of the conversation. Sol, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. I think that's such a good point. In these issues and bringing them together, it is looking at these intersections between struggles for justice, but it's also looking at kind of borders between identities, borders of sexuality, borders of nation, borders that sever and divide, but also the people who will always be between and always be crossing. And I don't want to reveal too much, but there's also a love story in this piece. And I think there's many pieces that will challenge people from all different directions, and I hope bring up a lot of questions. Not give many answers, but at least ask a lot of questions that I think we need to begin asking.
And I certainly think that in Madison, we need to be asking a lot more of these questions and on a much more deep level. I also think that a lot of these issues are understood better in Madison than they might be in other places. What do you see as a place that the birds that are your hands can play in this larger movement?
It's a good question. I see it as a very small piece, but I see it as an important piece. I see it again as an opening, and as something. I think it's necessarily unfinished and it's imperfect, but it's something, and it's something out there. And I think for our community in Madison to have a piece that really comes out of us. It comes out of, although I've written it and directed it, it really is a collaborative process. It is coming out of all the different actors, everyone who comes, all of you out there who come, and begin this conversation. I think while Madison, I think sometimes we can be ahead in different progressive ways of challenging edges. I think we have a long way to go on these two issues specifically, and on challenging ourselves to think more radically, and to really start questioning our assumptions. The ways in which we unknowingly, I think in a lot of ways, participate in these systems that build walls and that continue to militarize and separate even those in our own community. So I hope it can be a start of conversation, but also a start of action, and really important action.
This is certainly, I mean, in so many ways, this is an unprecedented time for any of us. There's the whole economic crisis, but there is also the election of Barack Obama and what that represents.
It's so interesting to see Barack Obama's media appearances. He actually voted for the wall on the U.S.-Mexico border. He has a history of being very vague in what he said. He spoke, obviously with AIPAC, he's consistently supported Israel without any question. Or any challenge, even to looking at the occupation or looking at these policies of the wall. He actually had a speech in Berlin that he had during his campaign, and he was talking about the walls. And he said these walls between the rich and the poor, the walls between Christians, Muslims, and Jews must fall. And yet he was within miles of kind of the separation wall and said nothing of it. So I think there is room. I think there's potential, there's an opening. I think, as you were talking about in the segment before, I think it's kind of impossible to not see those iron walls, literally, that are surrounding him with the Israeli lobby right now, but also kind of those pressures of politicians. But it also comes from us. I think it comes from progressives. I think it comes from kind of the groundswell of people that rose to elect him as president, to say that we want change, that even if a politician, in that rhetoric of change, what does change really mean? And that's not going to ever come, I believe, from him himself. It's going to come from a groundswell of people, and I think that comes from us really believing that it is in our hands and that we have the power as the United States, and we have the power of the people of the United States to challenge and to not only change policy, but to demand
and
change
I would
policy.
Say that we have the responsibility as the people
very
of the United
much,
States.
Very much. One of the things, another thing on the sense in Palestine and the occupied territories is that this is the U.S. They know this wall was built by the U.S. Everything is subsidized by our money, and is our responsibility. I think in Madison sometimes these borders can feel so far away, but it's not only our tax dollars, but it's the ways in which exactly we're participating every single day in that deafening silence. And so I think it's our responsibility to begin with the conversation. And I think the fear around these issues, and I think the fear people have about talking about this, speaks to that silence, speaks to the limitations and narratives. And I guess through this performance, I hope that it can begin to rupture that here and hopefully spread out from there more.
Jim Loeb in the first half talked about the chilling effect on the intelligence community by this torpedoing of a very qualified candidate to head the National Intelligence Council, based primarily on his more nuanced understanding of the Israel-Palestine issue. Maybe in response to that chilling effect, plays like yours, discussions that will be started, will be the warming effect to get people talking.
I hope so. A fire.
Sol Kelley-Jones, thanks so much for coming.
Thanks so much for having me.
And best of luck. Here. Break a leg.
Thank you.
That. And definitely we'll look forward to hearing from you again, because I'm sure you'll be doing interesting things. You've been listening to A Public Affair on listener-sponsored community radio WORT.